Welcome to Lost at 3 AM. Put your phone down, close your eyes, and let this be the last video you hear tonight. Relax, breathe, and let's begin. Tonight, we're taking a nostalgic journey back in time to one of the most iconic pieces of gaming history, the Game Boy. For many of us, this little handheld console was our first taste of portable gaming, offering the freedom to play our favorite games anywhere, anytime. It wasn't the most powerful device out there, but it was something truly special. Released in 1989 by Nintendo, the Game Boy became an instant classic, shaping the way we experience gaming today. It wasn't just a device, it was an experience that kept us glued to its small monochrome screen, whether we were playing Tetris, Super Mario Land, or the beloved Pokémon Red and Blue. In this video, we're going to explore the Game Boy's incredible legacy, from its humble beginnings to its lasting impact on portable gaming. Whether you were one of the lucky few who got to carry it in your pocket, or just saw it as part of gaming history, the Game Boy will always have a special place in our hearts. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of the Game Boy, where it all began. To understand the Game Boy's significance, we need to go back to its roots in 1989. Nintendo, already a household name thanks to franchises like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda, was looking for a way to bring gaming on the go. At the time, portable gaming systems existed, but they were bulky, expensive, and limited in their capabilities. Nintendo wanted to change all of that. The Game Boy was the brainchild of Gunpei Yokoi, the same genius behind the Game & Watch series and the original Metroid. Yokoi's vision was simple, a handheld system that was easy to use, affordable, and would provide gamers with an enjoyable experience wherever they went. He didn't want to create a flashy, expensive system, but rather something practical and accessible. Nintendo's approach to the Game Boy was different from anything on the market. Instead of focusing on color graphics or cutting-edge technology, they focused on what really mattered: portability and long battery life. The Game Boy wasn't the most powerful console by any means. It had a monochrome screen with limited colors, and its sound capabilities were relatively basic. But it was compact, affordable, and had the potential for a strong library of games. This stripped-down approach was exactly what players needed. Nintendo didn't try to compete with the likes of the Atari Lynx or the Sega Game Gear, which had color screens and flashy features. Instead, they stuck to what they knew best: simple, fun, and addictive games. And it worked. When the Game Boy hit the shelves, it wasn't just another gadget, it was a revolution in portable entertainment. Priced at an affordable $89.95 and packaged with the ever-popular Tetris, it became an instant success. The fact that it ran on just 4 AA batteries for up to 30 hours was a game changer. It meant you could take it anywhere and play it for hours without worrying about running out of power. But it wasn't just the hardware that made the Game Boy a success, it was the games. Nintendo knew that in order to succeed, they needed strong software to back up the hardware, and they didn't disappoint. Tetris quickly became a sensation, drawing people in with its easy-to-understand, yet difficult-to-master gameplay. Soon after, iconic games like Super Mario Land and The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening would follow, helping to solidify the Game Boy as the go-to portable gaming device. In a way, the Game Boy's success wasn't about having the best specs, it was about making gaming simple, fun, and accessible to everyone. It was a handheld system that didn't require much investment to get into, but it kept people coming back for more. And from that simple beginning, the Game Boy would go on to change the gaming landscape forever. When you first pick up a Game Boy, it doesn't feel like the future of gaming. In fact, its hardware might seem almost primitive by today's standards. The bulky rectangular design, the monochrome screen, and the large cartridge slot don't scream cutting-edge technology. But what the Game Boy lacked in flash, it more than made up for in practicality and innovation, especially when compared to other handheld systems on the market at the time. First, let's talk about the screen. The Game Boy's screen was a basic 2.6-inch monochrome display, capable of displaying 160 x 144 pixels. It wasn't the sharpest or most colourful screen, but it had something more important: visibility. With a simple greenish-grey tint and no backlight, it might seem like a limitation, but it actually played a big role in extending the battery life, something other handhelds at the time struggled with. It was easy on the eyes and, more importantly, it was easy to play on for extended periods, especially with the Game Boy's long battery life. Speaking of battery life, the Game Boy's ability to run on just 4 AA batteries for up to 30 hours was a game changer. At the time, other portable systems, like the Atari Lynx or Sega Game Gear, boasted colour screens and more advanced tech, but their battery life often lasted just a few hours at best. Nintendo's focus on power efficiency gave the Game Boy a huge advantage. It wasn't about flashing graphics or gimmicks, it was about creating a reliable, on-the-go gaming experience that people could enjoy for hours without constantly searching for a charger. The Game Boy's hardware also stood out because of its portability. Weighing just 8 ounces, it was small enough to fit in your pocket, making it the perfect companion for gaming on the go. While other handhelds tried to impress with flashy designs and advanced features, the Game Boy kept things simple. It had a simple, sturdy plastic casing, which made it easy to hold, even for hours on end. And it was tough. Over the years, many gamers dropped their Game Boys, only to find it still working just fine. Perhaps the most revolutionary part of the Game Boy's hardware was its cartridge system. Unlike other consoles, which required physical media like floppy disks or large disks, the Game Boy used small, easily portable game cartridges that slid neatly into the device. This design made swapping games incredibly easy and gave the Game Boy a huge advantage in terms of convenience. The cartridges were also relatively cheap to produce, which kept the overall cost of the system down and made games more affordable for consumers. While the Game Boy may not have boasted the most advanced technology of its time, it more than made up for it with its clever design choices that made gaming accessible, portable, and long-lasting. Nintendo took a bold step with the Game Boy, choosing to focus on practicality over flash, and that decision ultimately changed the course of gaming history. By prioritizing portability, affordability, and battery life, the Game Boy became more than just a console. It became a cultural icon. When the Game Boy first launched in 1989, it was far from a guaranteed success. Nintendo needed more than just innovative hardware to capture the market. They needed a game that would showcase the power of portable gaming and draw in a wide audience. Enter Tetris. Initially, Tetris wasn't even a Nintendo creation. It was a simple yet addictive puzzle game designed by Russian computer scientist Alexei Pajitnov. However, it was a perfect match for the Game Boy's hardware and the vision Nintendo had for its handheld system. When Tetris was bundled with the Game Boy, it became an instant hit, catapulting the system into the spotlight. The game's simple but challenging gameplay, fit for any age group, combined with the portability of the Game Boy, created the ideal formula for success. The magic of Tetris on the Game Boy was in its accessibility. Whether you were a seasoned gamer or someone who had never played a video game before, Tetris was easy to understand but hard to put down. The Game Boy's portability meant that you could pick it up and play a quick round during a break or spend hours trying to beat your high score. This made Tetris a game you could enjoy on your terms, and it quickly became a worldwide phenomenon. But Tetris wasn't the only game that made the Game Boy successful. Far from it. The system also had a strong library of other games that were perfect for the portable platform. Super Mario Land, released shortly after the Game Boy's launch, was a solid entry in the Super Mario series that brought the familiar platforming action of the NES to the handheld console. The game's simple yet engaging levels showcased the Game Boy's potential for more than just puzzle games. Another standout title was The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, released in 1993. While it was a departure from the more action-heavy Zelda titles of the time, Link's Awakening took full advantage of the Game Boy's strengths. The game's sprawling world, engaging puzzles, and deep story were all packed into a portable package, that didn't sacrifice depth for size. It's still considered one of the best Zelda games of all time, and it helped cement the Game Boy's reputation as a console that could deliver rich, immersive experiences despite its small size. Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue also became iconic titles for the Game Boy. Released in 1996, these games introduced a new generation of players to the world of Pokémon. With their addictive gameplay, trading system, and the goal of catching them all, the Pokémon games quickly became a cultural phenomenon and one of the most successful video game franchises in history. The ability to trade Pokémon using the Game Boy link cable was a revolutionary feature, adding a social and competitive aspect to the games that made them even more compelling. The early success of the Game Boy wasn't just about one game. It was the perfect combination of great hardware, an accessible library of games, and the right timing. Nintendo knew that they needed to provide more than just a simple handheld system. They needed to build an entire ecosystem that made portable gaming irresistible. And with Tetris leading the charge, followed by hits like Super Mario Land, Link's Awakening, and Pokémon, the Game Boy became the must-have device for gamers of all ages, setting the stage for the handheld gaming revolution that would follow. One of the Game Boy's most remarkable achievements was its incredible library of games. While the hardware itself may have been relatively simple, the games that were made for it were anything but. The Game Boy boasted a diverse selection that appealed to virtually every type of gamer, whether you were into action-packed platformers, immersive RPGs, mind-bending puzzles, or even sports games. The variety was staggering, and it was the strength of this library that cemented the Game Boy's place in gaming history. When it came to platformers, the Game Boy was home to some of the most iconic titles in gaming. Super Mario Land was one of the first games to truly show off what the Game Boy was capable of. While it wasn't as polished as its NES counterparts, it captured the magic of Super Mario with new, portable levels that showcased the Game Boy's ability to deliver fun and accessible experiences on the go. This was just the beginning. Games like Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins expanded on the formula, adding new mechanics, power-ups, and even introducing a new villain, Wario. But the Game Boy wasn't just about Mario. Metroid 2, Return of Samus, brought the beloved Samus Aran to the handheld for the first time. The Game Boy's limited capabilities didn't stop it from delivering an atmospheric, exploration-based adventure that felt just as gripping as the original Metroid game. Despite its simple graphics, the sense of isolation, the eerie music, and the thrill of uncovering secrets made it a standout title that still holds a place in Metroid fans' hearts today. Then, of course, there's the Pokémon franchise, which arguably became the Game Boy's crown jewel. Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue, and later Yellow, turned the Game Boy into a cultural phenomenon. With their addictive gameplay, in-depth world building, and the revolutionary concept of trading and battling Pokémon with friends. These games not only defined an entire generation of gamers, but also launched one of the most successful franchises in video game history. The Pokémon games were simple, yet incredibly deep, providing hours of exploration and a sense of accomplishment for even the youngest players. It was the perfect blend of collectathon gameplay, strategy, and social interaction that had players trading Pokémon with friends via the link cable. But it wasn't just about big-name franchises. The Game Boy also featured incredible puzzle games like Dr. Mario and Kirby's Dream Land. Dr. Mario, with its simple yet addictive puzzle mechanics, became a staple in the system, while Kirby's Dream Land introduced players to the adorable pink puffball who could inhale enemies and gain their abilities. The charm of Kirby and the satisfying gameplay made it an instant classic, and it remains a beloved entry in the Kirby series. The Game Boy also played host to a number of fantastic RPGs. Final Fantasy Adventure and The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening demonstrated the potential of portable RPGs, offering rich stories, exploration, and deep gameplay in small portable packages. These games proved that handheld consoles didn't need to sacrifice depth for portability, setting the stage for future handheld RPGs to thrive. And let's not forget the massive library of third-party games that helped expand the Game Boy's reach. Titles like Mega Man, Dr. Wily's Revenge, DuckTales, and Castlevania, the adventure brought beloved characters and franchises to the portable system, allowing fans to take their favourite characters on the go. Even sports games like NBA Jam and FIFA Soccer found their place on the Game Boy, proving that no genre was off limits. What made the Game Boy library truly special was its ability to deliver these incredible experiences while maintaining accessibility. The simplicity of the system's controls and the affordability of the games made it easy for anyone, young or old, new to gaming or experienced, to pick up and enjoy. And despite the limitations of the hardware, the creativity and design of the games meant that every experience felt rich, fun, and rewarding. In the end, the Game Boy's library wasn't just about playing games, it was about making gaming accessible to a broader audience. It showed that portable gaming didn't have to mean sacrificing quality or depth. The Game Boy's library remains one of the most impressive in gaming history, with timeless classics that are still cherished today. And thanks to the Game Boy's success, portable gaming would never be the same again. As the Game Boy continued to thrive, Nintendo realized that in order to keep up with the ever-evolving gaming market, the system needed a fresh update. Enter the Game Boy Color, released in 1998. This was a significant leap forward from the original Game Boy, introducing color graphics while still retaining the simplicity and portability that made the original so beloved. The Game Boy Color maintained the same basic form factor and controls as its predecessor, but the key difference was the introduction of a full-color screen. This allowed games to be more vibrant, immersive, and visually dynamic. Although the color display wasn't as advanced as modern handheld systems, it was a massive improvement over the monochrome screen of the original Game Boy. Games that were once limited by the Game Boy's monochrome palette now had a new depth of visual appeal. Alongside the upgrade in visuals, the Game Boy Color also boasted improved hardware that allowed for better gameplay performance. It featured a faster processor and more memory, which allowed developers to create games with more complexity, better graphics, and smoother animations. This new power enabled some of the best games in the Game Boy family to shine even brighter, pushing the handheld gaming experience to new heights. One of the most iconic aspects of the Game Boy Color's release was its ability to play all of the original Game Boy games, meaning that existing owners didn't have to leave their old games behind. Players could simply pop their old cartridges into the Game Boy Color and still enjoy their favorites with upgraded colors, without sacrificing their library. It was a smart move from Nintendo, ensuring that the Game Boy Color was compatible with the massive catalog of Game Boy games, which also helped ease the transition to the new system. The Game Boy Color also introduced the world to several new and iconic games, such as The Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Seasons, and Oracle of Ages, which provided even more rich adventures in the Zelda franchise. Additionally, Pokémon Gold and Pokémon Silver became massive hits, continuing the success of the Pokémon franchise and taking full advantage of the Game Boy Color's capabilities with colourful, engaging worlds and new features like real-time day and night cycles. Beyond the games, the Game Boy Color introduced a variety of other new features, including support for multiplayer games via the Game Boy Link cable. This meant that you could battle your friends in games like Pokémon or race in Mario Kart with the same level of fun and engagement as on a console, but now it was portable. The Game Boy Color's success also showed that Nintendo's handhelds were not just a passing trend. They were becoming a key pillar in the gaming landscape. The popularity of the Game Boy Color proved that there was a massive demand for portable gaming, especially as more people sought ways to game on the go. While the Game Boy Color was an incredible system in its own right, it also set the stage for the next chapter in handheld gaming, leading to the Game Boy Advance, which would continue the evolution of Nintendo's portable consoles and eventually pave the way for the Nintendo DS and Switch. In retrospect, the Game Boy Color was much more than just a successor to the original Game Boy. It was an important step forward in the evolution of handheld gaming, blending the beloved simplicity of the original with the exciting new possibilities of color and enhanced gameplay. The Game Boy wasn't just a successful handheld console, it was a cultural phenomenon. Its release marked the beginning of portable gaming as we know it today, forever changing the way we experience and think about gaming. But its impact goes beyond the system itself. It shaped the gaming culture in ways that would ripple throughout the decades that followed. First and foremost, the Game Boy gave gaming a sense of mobility. Prior to its release, gaming was largely confined to the home. Consoles like the NES, SNES, and Sega Genesis kept players tethered to the TV screen, and there was little opportunity for gaming on the go. The Game Boy, however, made it possible to take your favorite games with you, whether you were on a long car ride, traveling, or simply waiting around in line somewhere. Suddenly, gaming was no longer confined to your living room. It was everywhere. For the first time, players could enjoy their favorite titles whenever and wherever they wanted, creating a whole new experience that hadn't been possible before. This portability aspect contributed to a shift in the way people engaged with gaming. The idea of gaming anywhere began to take hold, and with the Game Boy, players could enjoy a game on their lunch break or take a quick gaming session before bed. The rise of handheld gaming created an entirely new kind of gaming experience, one that didn't require a dedicated space and time commitment like traditional consoles. The Game Boy also played a crucial role in shaping the way developers approached portable gaming. While the hardware limitations of the Game Boy may have been a challenge, they also forced game designers to be creative, finding ways to deliver rich, deep experiences in a small portable package. Many of the titles developed for the Game Boy became benchmarks for what portable games could be. Pokémon, The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, Metroid 2, Return of Samus, and Super Mario Land all proved that you could create games with the same level of depth, charm, and excitement as console titles, even if the graphics and processing power were more limited. Perhaps one of the most lasting impacts the Game Boy had on gaming culture was its influence on the development of the RPG genre. Pokémon, in particular, was a game-changing series that defined the Game Boy era and continued to evolve with subsequent consoles. Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue introduced players to the idea of capturing, training, and battling creatures, and the concept of trading Pokémon between systems through the link cable made the experience even more immersive. The Pokémon franchise wasn't just a game, it became a cultural force, spawning TV shows, movies, trading cards, and more. This phenomenon helped to establish the Game Boy not only as a gaming device, but also as a platform for a wider cultural movement. Furthermore, the Game Boy's success helped solidify Nintendo as the leading company in handheld gaming, a title it would hold for years to come. The company's ability to innovate, capture the spirit of fun, and keep things accessible for all types of players allowed it to dominate the portable gaming market for decades. It's no coincidence that the Nintendo DS, 3 deciseconds, and now the Switch continue to build on the Game Boy's legacy, combining portable gaming with the home console experience to create an even more immersive and accessible gaming world. The Game Boy also created a bond between players through its multiplayer features, such as the Game Boy Link cable. This simple accessory allowed players to connect their systems and trade or battle in games like Pokémon and Mario Kart Super Circuit. It encouraged interaction and collaboration among players in a way that hadn't been possible with other handheld consoles before. This multiplayer aspect played a huge role in gaming culture, showing that gaming could be a social experience, even on a portable device. Looking back, the Game Boy changed the landscape of gaming in ways that extend far beyond its initial release. It sparked a revolution in mobile gaming, set the standard for portable devices, and influenced the development of gaming culture in a significant way. The Game Boy may have been small, but its impact on gaming culture is immeasurable. It showed that gaming didn't have to be confined to the living room. It could be enjoyed anywhere, at any time, forever changing how we interact with games and creating memories that still resonate with players today. While the Game Boy itself was a revolutionary device, its success was also bolstered by a range of unique accessories and innovations that expanded the console's functionality, making it even more versatile and engaging. These accessories not only enhanced the gaming experience, but also showcased Nintendo's creativity and ability to adapt to the needs of their audience. Let's take a look at some of the most memorable accessories and how they added value to the Game Boy experience. First up, one of the most iconic and useful accessories was the Game Boy Link cable. Released in the early 90s, the Link cable allowed Game Boy owners to connect two systems together for multiplayer gameplay. This was a game changer for many titles, particularly Pokémon, where players could trade Pokémon or battle each other in the games. The Link cable made gaming a social experience, encouraging players to interact, trade, and collaborate in ways that weren't possible with standalone handheld devices. For games like Tetris and Mario Kart Super Circuit, the multiplayer feature was a huge draw, turning the Game Boy into a portable social hub. But what about those moments when you found yourself in a low-light environment, trying to play your favorite game? Nintendo anticipated that need and created the Game Boy Light, a simple yet effective solution. This special version of the Game Boy Color had a built-in backlight, allowing players to enjoy their games in the dark without needing to rely on external light sources. Although the Game Boy Light was only released in Japan and not widely available in other markets, it quickly became a sought-after version of the Game Boy for those who valued playing at night or in low-light situations. Another popular accessory was the Game Boy camera and its companion, the Game Boy printer. Released in 1998, the Game Boy camera allowed players to take photos and save them directly onto their Game Boy cartridges. The camera was small, pixelated, and far from high definition, but it was a fun, quirky feature that made the Game Boy feel like a portable multimedia device. With the Game Boy printer, users could even print their photos on special thermal paper, creating mini photos or stickers to share with friends. The camera and printer may seem gimmicky by today's standards, but they highlighted the creativity that Nintendo infused into their handheld system, offering something completely unique in the world of portable gaming. The Game Boy magnifier and screen protector were another set of accessories designed for practical use. The magnifier, which attached to the front of the Game Boy, was essentially a small built-in magnifying lens that enlarged the screen, making it easier to play games. While it wasn't a glamorous accessory, it was a clever solution for those who found the Game Boy's small screen difficult to read or interact with. The screen protector, similarly, was a simple addition that helped keep the Game Boy's screen safe from scratches or damage during long gaming sessions. One of the more unusual, but still beloved accessories was the Game Boy Pocket Sonar. Released in Japan in 1999, this device was a small sonar unit that connected to the Game Boy and allowed you to fish. By using the sonar, players could cast their virtual fishing line and try to catch various fish species, turning their Game Boy into a makeshift fishing tool. Although this accessory was niche, it perfectly encapsulated the offbeat, fun spirit that Nintendo often infused into its products. Finally, Game Boy Advance Link cable allowed players to connect a Game Boy Advance to a GameCube, unlocking exclusive content and new gameplay experiences for some games. For example, in games like The Legend of Zelda, Four Swords Adventures, and Metroid Prime Fusion, the Link cable unlocked special content that could only be accessed by connecting the two devices. This feature demonstrated Nintendo's unique ability to integrate their handheld consoles with their home systems, creating a more cohesive and connected gaming experience across platforms. Each of these accessories added something special to the Game Boy experience, whether it was improving gameplay, offering creative features, or expanding the ways in which players could interact with the system. They not only enhanced the functionality of the Game Boy, but also further solidified its place as a versatile and innovative portable device Through these accessories, Nintendo showed that the Game Boy was more than just a gaming console. It was an ever-evolving platform that had the potential to change the way we experienced entertainment, both on the go and at home. The Game Boy's impact on the gaming world extends far beyond its time, shaping the future of portable gaming and influencing the way handheld consoles evolved. Although the Game Boy line officially ended in the early 2000s, its legacy continues to be felt in modern gaming, particularly in the devices we use to game on the go today. One of the most direct successors of the Game Boy is the Game Boy Advance, which took many of the lessons learned from the Game Boy and built on them. The Game Boy Advance improved on the original Game Boy's monochrome screen by introducing a full-color display, and it provided more powerful hardware, which allowed for richer, more complex games. The Game Boy Advance was a huge success. Continuing the Game Boy's reign as the king of portable gaming, it also introduced the concept of backward compatibility with older Game Boy games, ensuring that the massive library of Game Boy titles remained accessible to new players. But the Game Boy's influence didn't stop with the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo DS, which launched in 2004, took the concept of portable gaming even further by introducing a dual-screen layout, a touchscreen, and new ways to interact with games. It combined the best elements of the Game Boy's portability with the innovation of the GameCube, offering features like Wi-Fi multiplayer and a built-in microphone. Many of the best Game Boy games found their way to the DS via remakes or sequels, proving that the influence of the Game Boy was deeply woven into the DNA of Nintendo's later handheld systems. Even today, the Nintendo Switch, which blends portable and home console gaming, is a direct descendant of the Game Boy's success. By offering the flexibility of portable gaming with the power of a home console, the Switch carries forward the ideals that the Game Boy championed: accessible, fun gaming wherever you go. With games like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Super Mario Odyssey, the Switch has expanded the scope of what handheld gaming can achieve. But at its core, it's still the spirit of the Game Boy that allowed portable gaming to become what it is today. The Game Boy also played a major role in shaping the mobile gaming market that we see now. While the Game Boy wasn't the first device to bring gaming on the go, it was the one that made it mainstream. It created the framework for future generations of portable devices, from smartphones to gaming consoles like the Switch, showing that there was a large demand for gaming experiences that could be taken anywhere. Many of the ideas we see in mobile gaming today, whether it's the ease of playing short gaming sessions on the go or the emphasis on touchscreen gameplay, can trace their origins back to the Game Boy's success. And of course, the Pokémon franchise, which exploded on the Game Boy with Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue, remains one of the most profitable and influential gaming franchises in the world. The Pokémon series continued to grow and expand onto newer systems, but it was on the Game Boy that the world first became hooked on the thrill of capturing and battling creatures. Today, Pokémon has spread to every platform imaginable, from mobile phones with games like Pokémon Go to the Nintendo Switch with titles like Pokémon Sword and Shield. It's hard to imagine modern gaming without the influence of Pokémon, and the Game Boy is where it all began. The Game Boy also left behind an enduring legacy of innovation in gaming accessibility. By making gaming more portable, Nintendo introduced a whole new way for people to experience games. Whether it was on long car rides, during school breaks, or at the local park, the Game Boy made it possible to play anywhere, anytime. This concept of gaming on the go has since become ingrained in the modern gaming culture, with portable systems like the Nintendo Switch and mobile gaming on smartphones building on the Game Boy's foundation. In the end, the Game Boy wasn't just a console, it was a cultural icon. Its success demonstrated the potential of portable gaming, and it provided countless memories for a generation of gamers who grew up with it in their hands. And as we continue to play on modern handheld consoles and mobile devices, it's clear that the Game Boy's influence is alive and well, proving that some legacies never fade. As we come to the end of our journey through the world of the Game Boy, It's easy to see why this handheld console holds such a special place in gaming history. From its humble beginnings in 1989, the Game Boy quickly became more than just a piece of technology. It became a cultural touchstone, an essential part of many gamers' childhoods, and a device that revolutionized the world of portable gaming. What made the Game Boy so special wasn't just its hardware or even its iconic games. It was the way it changed the very idea of gaming. Before the Game Boy, gaming was mostly confined to your living room. You sat in front of a TV, and that was where your gaming experience took place. But with the Game Boy, Nintendo made gaming portable. It gave you the freedom to play anywhere, whether you were traveling, waiting in line, or just hanging out at home. It made gaming more accessible, more social, and more flexible than ever before. The Game Boy's influence can still be seen today in the way we game, whether it's in the development of the Nintendo DS, the Nintendo Switch, or the rise of mobile gaming. The idea that games can be played anywhere, at any time, lives on. It paved the way for portable devices to evolve into something more powerful, more connected, and more expansive than ever imagined at the time. And let's not forget the unforgettable games. From the instant classic Tetris to the phenomenon that was Pokémon, the Game Boy gave us some of the most memorable gaming experiences of all time. It wasn't just about playing a game, it was about being immersed in a new world, exploring, discovering, and making connections, all in the palm of your hand. What truly made the Game Boy unforgettable was its simplicity. It didn't need to be flashy or packed with the latest high-end technology. It offered something that the gaming world needed, a chance to play on the go without any frills or complications. Its impact wasn't in its specs, but in its ability to deliver fun, accessible gaming that anyone could enjoy, from kids to adults, casual players to die-hard fans. In the end, the Game Boy wasn't just a console, it was an experience, one that touched millions of lives and laid the foundation for everything that came after. Whether you were catching Pokémon, playing Super Mario Land, or simply enjoying Tetris on a road trip, the Game Boy created memories that last a lifetime. So, as we say goodnight to the Game Boy's story, let's remember what it taught us about the power of portability, simplicity, and fun. It may have been just a small, simple device, but its influence will continue to echo in the world of gaming for years to come. The Game Boy may have ended its run, but its legacy will live on in the handheld devices and mobile gaming experiences that followed.